Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to the 12th session and final session in the fall 2016 semester of the Sunoikisis Digital Classics program. This semester is the Digital Approaches to History and Archaeology semester, and the final class in this will be on historical sources, and we're very pleased to be joined by Monica Berti from the University of Leipzig, who I believe has been involved with Sunoikisis DC before, to join us and talk us through this this session. And so she'll give us some introduction to the sources and to a project that she's working on, and we'll also introduce some possible practical exercise for students to work with afterwards for discussion. So I'll hand over to you, Monica.
Okay, thank you, Gabby. Yes, I know something about Sunoikisis Digital Classics. Well, first of all, thank you, Gabby, for leading this track of Sunoikisis Digital Classics from London this fall semester. And I can also mention the fact that 2 days ago with Gabby, we had a planning seminar in Leipzig for next semester. So we will have other cool stuff after Christmas, and we will start in the last week of January. But now, I can start talking about this last session for this semester, which is about historical sources. I share my screen. Okay, I start screen sharing, and now, okay, I start playing my slides. Can you see my slides?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, excellent. So today the topic is historical sources. In a digital environment, of course, but well, historical sources is a big topic, and I will focus on a specific topic within this topic, which is the example of Greek fragmentary historical sources, which is a specific topic, but not small, it's quite big, because most of the textual sources we have in Greek literature is preserved in a fragmentary form. And we are going to see what I mean by fragments in this case. Well, the outline for today, for the first part of this session, I will talk about what we mean by fragment, why are we interested in textual fragments, then I will mention briefly collections of textual fragments, and then finally I will focus on a specific collection of Greek fragmentary historical sources, in this case the collection of the so-called Fragmenta Historicorum Graecorum, and the digital version of this collection. Well, first of all, in this case, what do we mean by fragment? In classics, but not only in classics, we use the term fragment for different kinds of sources. The first one is material fragment. In this case, you can see a fragment of an archaeological monument, a fragment of the Nereid monument preserved at the British Museum. So in this case, you have a piece of an archaeological monument. So this is part of the original monument. This is a fragment, a material fragment. Then we have another kind of material fragments. In this case, in these slides, we can see a fragment of a papyrus. And this is also a textual fragment, in the sense that here we have a material fragment bearing textual evidence, because this fragment has a text. In this case, this is a papyrus from the Florence collection, Papiri della Società Italiana, and in this case we have a text of Menander. And this is so a material fragment, but also a textual fragment, a surviving broken off piece of an ancient writing. So we have part of the original text. But then we also have another kind of textual fragments, and in this case we mean quotations and text reuses of lost authors and works. And today we are going to focus on this kind of textual fragments. I have an example here. You can see a page with a Greek text from the Deipnosophist of Athenaeus of Naucratis. Within this Greek text, and the text of the Deipnosophist is preserved, is still extant, within this text we have quotations or references to other authors and works that are now lost. So here you can see in red, we have, for example, references and quotations of comic authors. We have different words mentioning the reused authors, the titles of these reused works that are now lost, and then also verbatim quotations of these works. We have many examples like this, and the work of scholars is to look for these quotations and text reuses and try to reconstruct personalities of lost authors, and also try to reconstruct the content of these lost works. So this is what we mean by fragment. I understand that this term fragment in this case can be a bit misleading, because we don't have the original text, so we don't really have a fragment. In this case, we can say that the fragment is the result of the work of scholars who look for these pieces of evidence and they try to reconstruct something about the original text, which is lost. Now, why are we interested in these specific textual fragments? Well, because they are important. As you can see from a survey conducted in the Thesauros Linguae Graecae, in the TLG, we can see that for Greek literature between the 8th century BC down through the 3rd century CE, about 60% of authors are preserved only in fragments. By fragments, I mean only through quotations and text reuses in later sources. So this is a very high percentage. Then we have 12% of authors for which we have both surviving works and fragments. So we have both works that are still extant and other works of these authors that are lost and preserved only through quotations and text reuses. And then we have about 30% of authors for which we have their works. So their works are still surviving. So you can see this is for Greek literature, but also for Latin literature we have a similar number. So you can see how textual fragments in this case are important. And this is why we're interested in these textual fragments. Then why we have these fragments? Well, we can only speculate on the reasons that many works did not survive intact. Of course, as we know, we had physical accidents like library destruction, so we lost for these reasons their works, but also we can have a deliberate selection. In the centuries, there was a selection of the most important works, and other were not preserved. Then the shifting boundaries of the canon over time. So we know that in the centuries we have different canons, so a different sort of list of the most important works that have to be preserved. We know, for example, the Alexandrian canon, when Alexandrian scholars started to select the most important works to be preserved, and this is another reason why we lost other works, and then loss of transmission, and therefore loss of memory, and many other reasons. So it's difficult to give a full list of reasons, but these are the most important ones. Then about collections of textual fragments. In the 19th and in the 20th centuries, scholars have been producing many different collections of fragmentary authors and works. So scholars have been looking for traces of quotations and text reuses in surviving works. And now we have many print editions of the so-called fragmentary authors and works belonging to different genres. For example, we have collections of fragmentary historians, but also philosophers, tragic and comic authors, epic poets, lyric poets, and so on. So we have really many collections. If you want to have an idea of this topic and also about the methodology, there is an interesting book by Glenn Most about collecting fragments with different papers concerning this topic for the methodology and also different collections. Also because even if these authors belong to different genres, there are similar problems, especially for prose authors. Now, today, we are going to focus on Greek fragmentary historians and on a specific collection. And in this case, I'm not focusing on the historical problems, but I'm focusing on how to represent these sources in a digital environment and how to work with the digitization of a print edition. And so I'm focusing on the Fragmenta Historicorum Graecorum. You see the DFHG because this is the digital Fragmenta Historicorum Graecorum. Of course, I'm going on, but please interrupt me if you have questions or if something is not clear. Now, again, fragments. As we have seen before, by fragment we mean quotations and text reuses of lost text. I have again a page on the right with the Greek text, again, the Deipnosophists. This is the edition of the source text preserving quotations and text reuses. Basically, the scholar looks for traces of quotations and text reuses in a text like this. He annotates the portion of text that includes, preserves a quotation of a lost author, and then on the left you can see this chunk of text from the text of the Deipnosophists reprinted in a paper edition of fragmentary authors and works. For example, on the left, you have a page of the Fragmenta Historicorum Graecorum. This page has fragments of this historian, Histros the Callimachian, and this passage of the Deipnosophist preserving a quotation of the Attica, a history of Athens by Histros, have been reprinted in this page. So you have a print collection of excerpts from source text. So this is important. As you can see, these collections of fragmentary authors and works basically are collections of excerpts extracted from their context and from the textual data about those contexts. This is important because these paper editions are important, but the problem is that in these paper editions, you have chunks of text isolated from their context. So in the paper edition on the left, you can see this chunk of text, but in order to understand this fragment, you have to read the whole text of Athenaeus, or at least the big context, to understand why this, in this page we have a reference to Histros and to his work. So why Athenaeus is quoting Histros, and for about what topic. But here you can see the characteristic of a print collection of fragmentary authors and work. And this example is the Fragmenta Historicorum Graecorum. And now we can see the characteristics of this collection. So this collection, the Fragmenta Historicorum Graecorum, is a collection edited by Karl Müller in the 19th century. It was published between 1841 and 1870. For this collection, we have 5 volumes. You can see the images in this slide. And these 5 volumes include about 600 Greek fragmentary historians, 600 authors. This is the first big collection of Greek fragmentary historians. As you probably know, I'm sure you know that, there is another collection published after Müller, which is the Fragmente der griechischen Historiker by Felix Jacobi, which is the second big collection, which is an update collection. Felix Jacobi started with the work of Müller, and he expanded the work of Müller, adding other authors. And the collection by Jacobi includes 800 authors, but it's not finished in the sense that Jacobi was able only to publish the first 3 parts of his list of Greek fragmentary historians, and now the work is under development. There is a continuatio and the volumes are published by Brill. Now, going back to the edition of Müller, these authors cover a period of time from the 6th century BC to the 7th century CE. And in the collection, we have fragments of Greek historians, mainly in Greek, but we also have sometimes fragments in Latin, because of course we have Latin authors referring to Greek historians. And in the last volume, in the 5th volume, we also have Greek and Syriac historians preserving Armenian sources. In this case, we only have the French translation of these authors. Now, from a digital point of view, these volumes are out of copyright. They are available online in Internet Archive, and here I have a link to Internet Archive, as you can see. So you have the 5 volumes. You can download them as PDF and in other formats, and so you can access them and read them. And this is one of the reasons why I'm working with Müller, because I can use the text. It is not protected by copyright like the edition by Jacobi, but also because this collection is complete. As I said before, the edition by Jacobi is still under development. And then also because this collection is still important, because this is the first collection of Greek fragmentary historians. And if you want to understand the work produced by Jacobi, you have to start with Müller, because this is really the first big collection. Now, here in this slide, I have a page, an example of a page of this collection, just to understand the structure of the content. Each volume is arranged according to authors, and authors are arranged in a chronological order, except for volume 1, where we have the Attilographers, the historians of Attica, for the 6th and 5th and 4th century. And for each author, we have a section. In this case, we have the first page of the fragments of Hecataeus, Hecatai Fragmenta, and the page is usually always like that. In the upper part of the page, you have the fragments. Each fragment has a number, as you can see, and each fragment is under a specific work, in the sense that here, for example, we have the first fragments of Hecataeus belonging to his work, his lost work, Periodos Ges, and there was a section within this work about Europe. Each fragment has a number, and the number reflects the order established by Müller, in the sense that according to different reflections based on the text, Müller decided to order the fragment. Sometimes within the fragments we have also information not only about the title of the work, but also about the book. For example, this fragment belong to book 1 of the Periodos Ges. So the order of the fragments depends on the decisions of the editor of a specific collection of fragmentary authors. And in fact, there are differences among different collections. For example, the same fragment can have a number in one edition by a different number in another edition. For example, Jacobi orders the fragments in a different way. Anyway, going back to Müller, this is the structure. We have a number, first of all, fragment 1 or fragment 2, and then we have at the beginning, we have a reference to the source text preserved in the fragment. As you can see in this slide, the first fragment of Hecataeus is from Herodotus. Herodotus is quoting Hecataeus, and then we have, after the reference to Herodotus book 4, paragraph 36, we have the Greek text of the fragment. After that, usually, but not always, we have a very short commentary in Latin. Then, below, at the bottom of the page, as you can see, we have the Latin translation of each fragment, including also a Latin translation of the title of the fragmentary work. In this collection, we don't have a critical apparatus for the Greek fragments. This is something we have in Jacobi, but in Müller is missing. So this is the structure of this collection. Now, for the digitization, well, first of all, one of the goals of producing a digital version of this collection is to produce a list of Greek fragmentary historians and to contribute to the Perseus catalog, but not only, so to contribute in general to authority lists of ancient authors. In these slides, you have a screenshot of a Google spreadsheet, which is available online. Now you can see the spreadsheet. Here I have a list of the authors, of the 600 authors of the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum, but in this list I also have other information in the sense that, for example, you can see for each author I have a reference to the FAG, the pages where I have the author in the FAG, a link to the PDF in archive.org, but then I have other information like the TLG names of the author, then links to other external resources like the Pauli Visove and the Wikisource, and then of course to the Jacobi collection, the Brill's New Pauli, sorry, I have references, I have links to the entry about a specific author in the New Pauli by Brill. And so if you click here, you can go to the Brill's New Pauli. Of course, in this case, these resources are not open. You have to pay, or you have to be in an institution where you can access these resources. And then I also have other links to Jacobi in the Brill website, to the Brill's New Jacobi, and then other links to the Perseus catalog, which is the catalog of ancient Greek and Latin authors, including also fragmentary historians. And one of the main goals of this work of digitization of the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum is to expand the Perseus catalog with minor authors that we have in the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum. Then, okay, this is one first thing. So to produce this list and to expand, so to go beyond the edition by Müller, to generate a list, to get links to other collections and other resources. But then the big work is to digitize the volumes. As you know, so we have files in Internet Archive, and here in Leipzig, for the Open Greek and Latin project, we have OCR'd the PDF files of the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum. By that I mean that we have, starting from the images and using OCR techniques, optical character recognition techniques, we have produced not just images of the files, but text. And now we have files with the text of the 5 volumes of the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum. In this slide, you can see an example. This is the beginning of a file, Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum V1, volume 1. This is a TXT file. This is the result of a work of OCR. In this file, I have the whole content of volume 1. In fact, I have, again, 5 files for the 5 volumes of the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum. Well, this is good because here I have the text, but of course there are various problems in the sense that I have one text for one volume. As you can see here, this is really the beginning of the collection, so the first pages of the collection. In this file, I have the text, and I have also a basic XML encoding reflecting the layout of the paper edition. Basically, I have tags for marking the pages of the print collection and then the paragraphs. And this is good, but of course I have to find a way to structure the content, because this is not enough, in the sense that within this collection, as you can see, there are many components because these volumes of Müller, in the volumes we have introductions in Latin, indices, then we have the text of the fragment in Greek, commentary, Latin translations, and so on. Another aspect is that now we, thanks to OCR techniques, we get excellent results in terms of correctness, but we don't have perfect results. So we can still find mistakes due to the OCR. And I will talk again about this and how we can manage this problem. And here again, in this slide, I hope maybe it's small, but here you have on the left a page of the TXT file with the OCR output, and on the right you can see the same content in the PDF, which represents the paper edition. And this is a first example. So as you can see on the left, I have numbers for the fragments, and then I have P tags that represent the paragraph. And in this case, the paragraph is the whole fragment, but within a P, within the two P tags, I have different pieces of information because I have the reference to the source text, the Greek text, and the commentary. So this is one first problem. How can I work with an OCR output like this? The goal is to structure the content because for many reasons. And we tried with different techniques. We tried to, we developed at the beginning XML guidelines for dealing with paper editions of fragmentary authors, and we started with a manual encoding. So manually we started really to add tags in order to distinguish the components of the page. But of course, this is too time consuming. This is impossible for 5 volumes, including 600 authors. Then we tried different experiments with automatic techniques, because again, we can, as you can see in the screenshot on the left, we have, for example, numbers that marks the beginning of each fragment. But again, we have the problem that the P tags include different pieces of information. And then another problem is that, as you can see, the OCR output works for each page. So basically we have, if you look on the left, you have at the beginning we start with fragment 1 down to fragment 11. And then after that, after fragment 11 on the left, you can see that we have the Latin translation. But this is not the way the collection is meant to be read, in the sense that in the OCR output we have Greek, Latin, because of course we have an OCR for each page, but I would like to have only the Greek text and then the Latin. So basically, I would like to have 2 files per each author. So one file only with the fragments, the Greek text of the fragments, and then another file only with the Latin translation. So please interrupt me if this is not clear, but so this is one of the main issues when working with these OCR outputs. Well, before going to the digital, for the version, the online version. So basically, in the end,
a question from
yeah, sure.
From Anisa, who just says, did you use Bruce Robertson's OCR materials?
Yeah. So I go back also to the Hangout because I don't see you. Okay, hi, Anisa, hi, Sarah. Yes, okay. In this OCR was this was not developed by Bruce Robertson. So this OCR was developed by a company, DDD, in the United States, and I have to say, well, the results are excellent. So I don't want to complain, in the sense that, so this is how we work in the OGL project. So we gave them these PDFs, but also guidelines for producing a basic XML encoding. And so these companies, they produce an OCR output. They also correct some mistakes, and they can add these basic XML encoding. As you can see, basically reflecting the pages. We have page breaks and then the paragraphs. Yeah. Yes, Bruce Robertson now has been developing also an interface for working on that. Yes, this was a great work, and we have many other sources in the OGL project producing this in this way. And yeah, and I can mention Simona Stoyanova because this is part of our community, and she knows a lot about that because she contributed to this, talking a lot with this company, and because there was a big change between us and them, so helping them to work on these OCR outputs, and especially for providing them with guidelines. Also because basically critical editions, well, we have many different critical editions, but at the same time we can find common problems for different critical editions. For example, usually collections of fragmentary authors and works are like that, where you have these chunks of text with the number of the fragment. Other editions of still extant sources has the text, the Greek or the Latin text, and then below the critical apparatus. So this is just to give you a rough idea of the work. Okay, so okay, and this is, of course, so I can say that this is an excellent output, but the difficulty is to find a good way for, and this is what I have been learning, and I'm still learning, how we can combine manual and automatic work, because with this kind of work, with this digitization, we have to combine manual and automatic work. We can't do everything manually because this is crazy and this is not, methodologically is mistaken, but at the same time, we can't only have an automatic process. And the difficulty is to combine a good manual work, something that we can manage, and at the same time a good automatic work, so something that a human being can't manage, and something that the machine can manage. Otherwise we get we produce more mistakes, and you can see when you start encoding manually these sources, you can understand that, because there is a work that you can do manually, but other work that is impossible. So in the end, I found a system, basic system, going through the OCR. First of all, marking with simple markers, not XML tags, but just simple symbols. First of all, I started signaling authors. And so I produced, for example, for the first volume, given that in the first volume we have 20 authors, I produced 20 files corresponding to the 20 authors, and this was quite fast. Then after that, I went through the text and I distinguished between the Greek part and the Latin part. And again, for each author, I produced 2 files in total, so 40 files. For each author, 1 file including the Greek or the fragments, and then the other for Latin translation, and so on. So it was quite fast. That's why in a few months I could produce the first volume includes only 20 authors, but in the second volume we have more than 100 authors, and in the third volume we have about 124 authors. And now we will see the visualization of these fragments. Now we can see, yes, the first result of this work. You can access it online, the DFAG project, and yes, we can go online to see the content. Well, this is a visualization. Well, this is a website describing the project, and within the website I have a visualization of the collection. As for now, you can visualize the first volumes. I also have a volume 3, and it will be ready by the end of January. Behind this, I have a database SQL database. Well, as for now, I can start showing you something about the website, and then we will talk again about the database and other things. So, well, the digitization, I already mentioned the digitization of the PDF files done by the Open Greek and Latin project in Leipzig. In the website, you have a description of the content of the volumes. And then here you can see, well, numbers. As for now, online I have 2 volumes with 118 authors, 280 fragmentary works belonging to these authors, and then about 3,700 fragments. So in the visualization, well, basically, the first problem was to work with the OCR output, as I mentioned, in order to structure the content, to distinguish among the different components, so references to the source text, then the part concerning the Greek text of the fragment, the Latin translation, and the commentary. And I could do that. Then the other thing was to build a database. And here, in some way, even if the effort is to respect the work done by Müller, and this is important because in this case I am digitizing a paper edition produced by an editor, and of course I have to respect his editorial decisions, but in any case, in some way, you have to interpret the work of an editor. And in the visualization, we can see in the visualization here, I have, okay, in this case, I have this menu, this slide in out navigation menu. And then we will see that in the slide in out navigation menu, I have different things. So going back to the menu here, as you can see on the left, I hope you can see my screen, my window with the navigation menu.
Yep.
Okay, because I don't see you. So in this case now I have volume 1 and volume 2. So I use the Latin form by Müller, so volumen primum, and under volume 1 I have the list of authors included in volume 1. At the beginning I have the prefatio, and then I have the authors. And for each author I represent the arrangement by Müller. For example, I have a first author, Ekataeus, and Ekataeus is under an Ekatae section, Ekatae Fragmenta. And under this section, I have different works. The first work by Ekataeus is Periodos Ges. Periodos Ges. Periodos Ges has 2 sections, one about Europe and the other about Asia, and within each section I have the fragments. And then Genealogiae, then I have, for example, a section with Fragmenta Incerti Loci. In this case, we don't know, we know where these fragments come from, in the sense that we have the source text, but we don't know the work to which these fragments belong to. And then other fragments that are, according to Müller, they are not of Ekataeus, and so on. So this navigation menu reflects the editorial work by Müller. This is the arrangement by Müller. And the same thing for volume 2, the second volume. In this case, starting from the second volume, Müller arranges the author in different books, and so that's why we have Liber Primus, and then again we have a list of authors, Liber Secundus, etc., etc. This is a chronological order. Now, going back, so this is the navigation menu, sliding and slide out navigation menu, and here you can see the possible, this is an example of visualization. So here you can see we have the first, we have fragments of Ekataeus, Fragmenta Incerti Loci. Basically, this is the same structure. Yeah.
Is it possible to zoom in on that at all? Or
yes, yes.
Lose the layout?
Yeah, I know, because, so let me try, because it's a bit slow, because the whole thing includes 2 volumes and is 16 megabytes. So that's why the zooming is a bit Let's go. This is another. So I hope I can do that also in the Hangouts. So, okay, I hope you can see something now. I'm not sure, but let's try. Let's try again to zoom. Can you visualize something now?
In the Hangout, yes. In YouTube, not much.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it doesn't matter too much to be able to read the Greek, but...
No, exactly,
yeah.
because now the thing is that I want just to show in general the visualization. This is an experiment in the sense that on the left you have the first, so basically in this case you visualize the fragments horizontally. So we have in black, you have a reference to the author, Hecatae Fragmenta. So this is a fragment of Hecateus. The number of the fragment, in this case, I'm seeing fragment 333. Below you have the page, so there is a link to the page in the paper edition. Then after, in the second column, I have the source text. In this case, I have a fragment from Stephanos of Byzantium. Then the Greek text of the fragment in the third column. Then in this column, I have the Latin translation. Then I also have, not for every fragment, I have a last column with the commentary. So this is an experiment for visualizing. This is a visualization. Behind, as I said, I have a database reflecting this, in the sense that for each fragment I have information about the author, the number of the fragment, the witness, the source text preserved in the fragment, the Greek text, the Latin translation, and the commentary. So this is the general arrangement. And so maybe I can go back to the, let's see, now I have to zoom out because it's too big. Okay, I have a description in the website about this, and as you can see, I hope you can read this page. Maybe I can zoom in again. So I have the slide in, out, navigation menu, and the page. In the menu, I have an arrangement by volumes, then I have the prefaces, a distinction by books, and then I have the list of authors, works, books, and fragments. And then I also have the index nominum et rerum of volume 1. Here, again, the description of the main page. As we have seen, I have the fragments, so for each column I have different pieces of information about the fragment. I also have introductions to the authors, because, let me go back to the, we have to wait for a while for this. Okay, for example, here, if I look for a specific author, this author, Amelisagoras Chalcedonius, I have also at the beginning the introduction, because for every author, Müller writes an introduction presenting the author, and then after that I have the fragments. And here you have a description, so a 5-item rows for each fragment with fragment number, the page, the source text, the Greek or Latin text of the fragment, the Latin translation, and the Latin commentary. In the collection, I also have surviving sources, still extant sources. For example, I have the Bibliotheca of Apollodorus, the text of Diodorus Siculus, because Müller wanted to add this text for various reasons. And this was not problematic, but of course I had to work on that to distinguish fragmentary authors and still extant works printed in the text. And in this case, for these authors, I have the Greek text and the Latin translation and the commentary. Now, this is, well, I want to experiment a bit with the visualization to have an interface. Of course, the goal of this project, and this is important, is not to produce a digital replica of the paper edition. I don't believe in that, in the sense that the goal of this project is to access the content of the DFHG. We have the book. If we want to read the content, we can use the book, which is perfect in itself, or at least it is very good. the main reason for this work is to access the content, so to perform searches in the content, in the Greek fragments, to extract information about source text preserved in the fragments, then other information, for example, the Latin translation for possible alignments between the Greek text and the Latin translation, or the commentary. Of course, I also wanted to produce a visualization, but this is, again, the visualization is an interpretation of the edition, but this is not the main reason for this project. And again, this is not meant to be a digital replica of the book, because we can't reproduce the book in a digital format. In a digital environment, we can have something else. And in fact, I have other tools for working and accessing the text of the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum. For example, I have a search tool, and I can search words in the collection in two ways. But with the mouse in the main page, for example, here I can, I don't know, clicking a word, I can get results, as you can see, just clicking on a word, Attida, I have results. In this case, what I get Morpheus lemmata for this word, because the project, the content of the database is connected to Morpheus, which is the morphological parsing and lemmatizing tool of the Perseus project, where I get the form Attida as it is in the collection, but then also the lemma Attis. And so here I have a link and I can see the lemma in the Perseus project. And then after, I also have the number of occurrences of this specific word in the FAG authors. As you can see, I have the name of the authors. For example, in Hellanicus, I have 2 occurrences of the work, of the word, sorry, Attidas. But I also have, I can also access a search tool. Here I can type a word in Greek or Latin and I can get results. I also get results, let me see, because sometimes for some entries, for example in this case, Olympiados, as results I get not only Morpheus lemmata, but also Suda entries, if this specific word is mentioned in the Suda, this Byzantine lexicon. And so in this case, for example, for Olympiados, I have different entries in the Suda for this word. Under the letter Omicron, this is the first one, Olympias, because of course from the work I get the lemma, and through the lemma I can go to the Suda online. Here you can see the Suda online. I could do that because I have a list of the entries in the Suda, and so I can have a link to the entries in the Suda. And the Suda is important because also because not only because it's a fundamental resource, it's a Byzantine lexicon and an encyclopedia covering many words concerning classical antiquity, but also because in the Suda there are many fragments of Greek historians. So this is a first experiment for going beyond the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum and connecting, linking the content of the text, specifically the text of the fragments, with external resources. In this case, Morpheus, the Suda. I would like, of course, to connect this with other resources. Then another thing, through the search, I also have another tool, because as you can see on the right, I hope you can see something, I understand maybe YouTube is small, but on the right, when you search something, you have an edit link. Through the edit, and this is interesting, I can open a new window where people can correct the text of the fragments, in the sense that, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have an excellent OCR output of this collection, but still, we can still find mistakes due to various reasons. Sometimes we have also mistakes in the paper edition. We have to remember that this edition was produced in the 19th century, but also because sometimes the OCR can't read correctly the paper, the page, also because the page is quite old, is yellow. So if there are mistakes, people can correct the mistakes. In the witness, as you can see in this window, we have different columns. So the witness, which is the source preserving the fragment. Then we have a fragment text, so another part where I have the Greek text of the fragment, the Latin translation, and when I have it, also the commentary. And it's possible to type, to type something within these frames, to write the name of the contributor and then submitting it. So this is, again, a first experiment of sort of crowdsourcing for involving the community and helping this project in correcting OCR mistakes. This is a problem we have now. This is due to the technology. Again, we get excellent results, but still we need to deal with this problem about OCR mistakes.
Sorry, Monica,
yes.
you may have said this and I missed it, but in that editing interface you just showed there, do the users have access to the page images as well?
Yes. So let me go back to the, okay, here, for example, we have in the first column in black, I have the name. This is really the name of the section reflecting the language of Müller, fragment, and then I have a link, page 22, and here I have a link to the PDF file, in this case in Google Books, so I can check. Again, also for correcting OCR mistakes, we can check the original text, the page, as it is in the paper edition, and then the visualization. So this is another, yes, tool I have. And another thing...
So they have to open them separately from the editing interface?
Yes,
yes,
this is true.
Sure.
Yes, you have to open two windows, one for the correcting OCR mistakes and the other for visualizing the page. Yes, I also have here a column in gray on the left with a link to the page. In this case, you can see what we have in page 22. For example, from here, page 22. So this is page 21, and then starting from page 22, I have the last part of the introduction of Amelisagoras, and then the first fragment 1, 2, 3, and then at page 23, I have another author. So on the first column on the left reflects the content in a specific page. And then under each fragment, I have a link to the page. Also, why this? Because not only because in this way you can check the paper edition, but also because in modern editions, when we refer to the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum, many times we also refer not only to the name of the author, the fragment number, but also to the page. Or sometimes we don't have the reference to the fragment number, but just to the page. Look at the fragments of Amelisagoras in the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum, volume 1 or volume 2 at page 22. So I included this because many times this is an element of modern citations of the Fragmenti Historicorum Graecorum. And another thing I have, but only for volume 1, is, for example, let me see if I can find it, because, okay, in this case, I have a fragment 373 of Hecateus. Below the page, I have another icon. This icon, if I click this icon, I can access the content of the Index Nominum et Rerum. Müller prints at the end of volume 1 an index with words included in fragments of volume 1. And so you can access the index. In this specific case, you can access the index, and this page contains the words of the fragment that are collected in the Index Nominum et Rerum. And of course, then through this icon, you can go to the whole index and see where is this specific entry mentioned in that specific fragment. I hope this is clear, because I mentioned many different tools of the project. And now how much time we still have. So is, okay, 5.
Yeah, about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Then, so this is, and then I'm trying, because there are many things, but I would like, so let's go back to another important thing. So these are different resources I have in the website. Then another important thing, for each fragment, I have specific identifiers expressed in the form of URNs, and you can see them described in this screen. So every URN reflects the structure of the edition by Müller. For example, this last URN, I hope you can see something. Let me focus. Okay, I think, well, now is too much. Okay, okay, excellent, thank you. So, for example, here I have URN LOFS, which refers to the Leipzig Open Fragmentary series, which is Fragmentary text series, which is the main project. FHG, Fragmenti Storicorum Graecorum, and after that, I have every element, so Ekateus, Ekatei Fragmenta, Genealogiae, Liber Secundus, and then the fragment number. This is important in the sense that through this URN, I can see the whole path, because I can see that fragment 350 of Ekateus belongs to the book 2 of the Genealogiae of this author. So in this case, I'm using the Latin works by Müller, because for each work in Müller, we have both the Greek form, but also the Latin translation. And so, and here I can represent the whole path. And this is something different from canonical and traditional citations of this collection, because usually for something like this, I have Ekateus FHG fragment 350, which is enough, because in the FHG I have only one fragment, which is a fragment 350 of Ekateus. But in a digital environment, I can represent the whole path, so I can be verbose in this case. Of course, in a paper edition, I don't want something like that, because this is too long, but in a digital environment, I can produce a verbose URN where I represent the whole path. And I represent here the editorial work of Müller, who attributes a specific fragment to a specific author, but also to a specific work, a specific book. Now, I can't focus on the problem of canonical citations and URNs, because we don't have enough time, but in any way, here you can find a description of the work. And again, this reflects the database behind. One other thing, this is a visualization, but behind that I have a database, and I have possible outputs. Again, I have both CSV files for each author, extracted from the database, and also XML files that I have produced starting from the guidelines that we originally wrote for the project. They are EPIDOC compliant. I'm still working a bit on them, because there are a few things that I have to correct, but we have, as for now, we have these two outputs, so people can access these data. So, and this is the important thing, because this is a visualization, but I want to have data. Also, briefly, I can mention the fact that I also have an API, which is accessible, and through the API, I can search the collection. Here, as you can see, I have the content of volume 1 and volume 2. We have a list of author, and I can use the API to search author names and fragment numbers. An example, for here, I have the first example. Through the API, you have a JSON output, and in the JSON output, you can see the structure of the database reflecting the arrangement of the fragments in the collection by Müller. So you have the arrangement, so the name of the author, the name of the fragmentary work, the witness, as you can see here, then the Greek text of the fragment, the Latin translation, also the URN and other pieces of information when we have them. This is good. For example, we are using this to extract the Greek text of the fragment and the Latin translation, because I have colleagues in Leipzig working on experimenting with translation alignment, how to align the Greek text of the fragment with the Latin translation. And then I also have Digger, I call this Digger, where I can filter the FAG according to authors, works, or sections and book numbers. For example, here I can get Caron and Persica, and I will just get a result, the fragments of this work, Persica by Caron. So these, well, are the main things. I think I can stop screen sharing. I never remember how to do that. Okay, no, yes, and so I mentioned many things. Again, the goal of this work, to access first of all the text, because in the project we have two goals in general: digitize paper editions of fragmentary works, and then produce new born digital editions of fragmentary works. This project belongs to the first case, digitize paper editions, and again, we don't want digital replicas of books, but to access the content, in the sense that I want to search the Greek text of the fragment. For example, two important things are to extract witnesses, so the source text, then align the Greek fragments with extant, in the case of fragments of still extant works, but we have few of them, and then especially extract name entities, because this collection is interesting because we have many place names, unknown place names, or author names, or titles of lost works of this, or descriptions of the content of lost works. Yeah. Usually I lead like Gabby, Sunoikisis Digital Classic Common Session, but now I'm talking, so.
That's great. Thanks for that, Monica. That was a great roundup of the project and of the issues around how we handle these sorts of fragments, fragmentary historical sources. There was one question, but you unfortunately you answered it before noticing that it was asked. So
okay.
So that was that's one thing there. So I have one question which I wanted to ask, which you've also partly answered at the end there, which is about you're talking about creating an edition, a digital version of the print work. And while you said you don't want to just create a digital facsimile of it, you did say you want to respect the editorial work of Müller and not try and change that content. But I wondered if there were any ways in which you considered that your work, apart from the obvious ability to search it and structure it in various ways, if there are any ways in which you consider your work to be improving on or adding to Müller. So were you, for example, is there any sort of apparatus type content that you're adding to this? He doesn't have an apparatus criticus. Is there any apparatus that you might be adding to this? What, for example, what happens if the source text that you're aligning to the source of these fragments, the 21st century readings of those source texts have been improved since the 19th century versions that Müller had? Is that being recorded in any way? How do we fix those alignments? What about changes that come from Jacobi, which are not just slightly improved readings or whatever, but fundamental changes to the way we understand a fragment that's been assigned from one author to a different author or something? Are any of these things recorded in your commentary, for example?
Okay, so as for now, I only have Müller's content, and as a first step, the effort was, yes, to respect Müller in the sense that I want to represent his editorial decisions, but definitely I want to go beyond Müller. One simple example, many times we can find for the source text idiom, in the sense that when he mentions the source text, Herodotus, book 1, paragraph 13. If I have two fragments from that source text, in the second case, Müller just writes idiom. Well, this is a problem because when I extract source text, I have in some way to change this idiom. So this is something I'm thinking. I have to change the text of Müller because I would like to expand abbreviations for bibliographic references, and then definitely to change something like idem or ibidem or something like that. This is the first thing. Then second, definitely, I want to align, first of all, to link the fragment to the whole context. When I have just a chunk of text from Herodotus, for example, I want to link it to the whole text of Herodotus and to compare different editions, definitely, because Müller was using editions available in the 19th century. So, and this is the balance. So I want to go beyond Müller, and then I'm linking, for example, I'm linking Müller with Jacobi. Okay, Jacobi online is not open, you have to pay, but still I can get URIs from Jacobi, and so I can connect them to see how the same fragment is edited in different way in the two collections. And so the balance is to respect Müller, so, or at least represent his editorial decisions. That's why I have these long URIs, but to go beyond that. And I know this is a difficulty we have, but also producing the database, in the end, you have to interpret the text when you have put fragment number. And then sometimes the problem is that under the same number, I have different sources. Usually we have one fragment per source, but sometimes no. If I have 3 sources under the same number, this is a problem because I can't use ABC. I don't know, if I have 3 sources under fragment 10, I can't say 10 ABC because this is something that Müller is already using for other cases. And so I have to find a way, because now I have, for example, this problem in the database. Sometimes I have more than one source under the same fragment number. So there are many issues, but definitely the goal of this is to go beyond Müller, enriching Müller, and yeah, and then we will see. I can't, of course, deal with everything, but at least structure the content, access the content, and I hope to have some help from the community, because 600 authors. A lot.
Totally, yeah, of course. And I assume, okay.
No, thank you for this question, because really it was very important.
Cool. No, I assume that if for example, the citation in Müller says this is Herodotus 591, and it's actually 592, and that's just a typo in there, you can just fix that. That's not about respecting, that's just about...
No, exactly, is completing, exactly, I'm not changing, but of course there is a lot of work that has to be done, because I can extract the column with the source text, and then I have to get this information. I can't do that manually. No, in this case, yes, it's just to make something more understandable. I'm not changing Müller, you're right, yeah.
And I'm sort of imagining, I don't want to sort of hog this, if either Anita or Sarah want to ask a question, do jump in, but if you do start doing these further improvements and adding apparatus criticus and adding further context from the source texts and other kinds of improvement of this kind in your own commentary and translations, have you thought about translating them as well as into Latin, into English, German, Italian, etc., for example?
Yes, so as for now, we are using, well, the Greek text and the Latin. We have a tool in Leipzig, so we are extracting data from this collection and to produce both some manual alignment for producing training data in order then to get an automatic alignment, Greek and Latin. But then definitely I would like to find other translations of these sources in other languages and then aligning them. Yes, this is another goal of the project. Yes. Yeah.
And you have your internal concordance with Jacobi, of course, which is important.
Yes.
So Jacobi, I mean, one possible criticism of this project is, why are you starting from a superseded edition rather than from a and there's the obvious answer to that is that it's open access now, but
Well, I can say one thing about that, because yes, it's open access. We know that. We know that in the community, I can't use Jacobi. Also because Jacobi is not finished. We have to remember that. And then, so I can't use Jacobi. Then there is a scholarly reason, because we have to start with Müller to understand Jacobi. Another thing I have to say, I know the British New Jacobi project. And the crazy thing, I'm sorry to say that, I like the British New Jacobi, so if people are listening to me, so I'm not criticizing the British New Jacobi, but in the paper edition of Jacobi, we always have references to Müller. So for each fragment in parentheses, we have the number of the fragment in Müller, because Jacobi is always referring to Müller. But in the digital version of Jacobi, in the British New Jacobi, we don't have anymore these numbers. And I know that because I have been copy editor for the British New Jacobi, and I remember that in the guidelines they said, no, we have to skip these numbers, we don't need them anymore. I think, as a scholar, this is a mistake, because really, Jacobi is a big collection, a big effort, but to understand it, you have to go back to Müller. So my goal is, okay, to produce a digital version, and to link my collection to Jacobi, but vice versa. And I'm talking with people in the British New Jacobi project, I'm offering them this resource, so that from the British New Jacobi, we can go back to Müller. Like as Jacobi meant it, because in Jacobi, in the paper edition, we have this, so. and
one very small thing that your project can do, therefore, is serve as the concordance for these various different, and then other editions that people have made of some of these fragments. Not necessarily editions of the entire corpus, but.
Yeah, and then another thing, yes, I know that the edition by Müller is old, obsolete, but it's a good experiment to see how we can represent fragments, because in the end, characteristics of fragmentary editions are very, very similar. Everywhere we have the fragment number, the text, the translation. Yes, I don't have critical apparatus, it's true, but how can we manage with them? So, and this is independent of the specific edition, and if an edition is old or new. And so this is an effort. And then one question, I don't know if I still have time.
Yes.
Okay, there is one question by Anise in the chat. So could someone use these URLs to link the fragments to another text? Well, yes.
You basically answered that immediately after she said it. You then gave some examples of doing exactly that.
Yeah.
But go ahead if you wanted to say some more.
Only one thing. I can't, describe the whole thing. Anyway, basically, we have two different URNs. One is the URN for the fragment, and you have seen the long URN reflecting the editorial work of Müller. The other URN is the URN of the source text. For example, Herodotus quoting Hecataeus, I will have one URN for the fragment of Hecataeus in Müller. And then I don't have yet in the interface and in the database, but the goal is to have also the URN for Herodotus, because I will have a CTS URN specifically referring to the chunk of text of Herodotus where I have the quotation of Hecataeus, so that I can align the two things, in the sense that I have a CTS URN, because Herodotus is the only citable evidence. I only have the text of Herodotus. The other URN represents the editorial work. Müller is reading Herodotus and classifies this chunk of text of Herodotus as a fragment of Hecataeus. If, not in this collection, but if I have fragments of still extant authors, for example, Athenaeus in the Deipnos of his quoting Herodotus, this is another thing, because the text of Herodotus is still extant, and I can align the two texts, and I can have two CTS URNs. Now, I can't explain what are CTS URNs, but this is the main thing. In any case, in GitHub, you have a list of these URNs and the description of the whole thing behind, but we need a whole course of Sunoikisis for talking about URNs and how we use them, so I stop now.
Yeah. No, I always have this fantasy that whenever we talk about creating a new edition, which is an enhancement and a collaborative editing from an out of copyright edition, and people always say, what about the 70 years of missing scholarship from doing that? That by, and I'm going to use Müller and Jacobi as an example, but even if this isn't true, I think it is true of some other projects. By applying the digital tools and the massive potential of huge collaborative work of the kind that that you're pioneering here, on the framework created by Müller, we can quite easily imagine creating a resource which not only equals but supersedes Jacobi in importance and in being up to date, because we have direct access to the primary sources in a way which is much more easily checkable than the print Jacobi, which we have to take their word for.
Yeah, definitely. The goal is to go beyond these collections, so we can build a big collection above specific collections. So definitely, so we can go, yes, beyond that. In a paper edition, we have the papers. So we have references in the paper edition, but in a digital environment, we can go out and beyond a specific collection. Definitely, yeah. This is the idea. And about the tools, about the technology, well, we have different standards. Of course, as we have seen, I can have different outputs, CSV files, XML files. Of course, we want to have them following the EPIDOC guidelines. We also have an API so that other people can search the collection. Again, this is an experiment. We can have different options also for the visualization. I am experimenting with them. And again, we want to use standards. I remember we mentioned that for another session about geography, I think. So we want to use standards, but at the same time, and we don't want to develop specific tools for specific projects, but we can't only follow standards. Also, we also need to think about specific needs. So, and again, this is a possible solution using possible technologies. There are, of course, many other possibilities. I'm not saying this is the way to do that. This is one of the ways we can do that. But what I'm learning, again, how can we combine manual and automatic work? This is something I'm learning, because this is a problem we have. We are producing a huge amount of data, and how can we deal with them? Because we can't annotate them manually. This is another important thing. Yes, I think this is at least my experience. Yes. I don't know if you agree on that, but
yeah, no, definitely, yeah. Cool, great, thanks, Monica. I just wanted to as we're now a quarter past, I wanted to quickly. You're not seeing anything on this screen, are you?
No, I see a white page. Yes. No, now white.
Okay. I'm gonna unscreen share and try and share that again. I was just trying to share the browser window. Why is that not? Is this in a different browser? Okay, let me try doing something different. Let me try opening that in Chrome a second. Sorry about that. Let's try this again. Screen share, application window. Yes, okay. So I just wanted to show that very quickly.
Yes, we didn't mention that.
Just to highlight to students who want to take part in the practical exercise, the part at the bottom here, and some of the activities that Monica suggested to follow up on this session, which basically are a lot of the functions that she's demonstrated that you showed for this in this demonstration so far. If the students want to make a start at correcting OCR mistakes, which we asked them to do, to try and do at least a couple of examples of each of the things suggested in the practical exercise there. Are there any parts of the edition that are more likely to have OCR mistakes in? So maybe volume 1 has been thoroughly proofread and volume 2 less so, or?
Well, not yet. There are many mistakes, I have to say, small things, but no, as for now, I need that work because I don't have enough time. So what I suggest is just not to look randomly for mistakes, but maybe start working on a specific author on a work, and then while you read these fragments, you search for them, you can find mistakes. So this is my suggestion to experiment, and yeah.
Yeah, and so you'll find, I mean, they could be, as you say, small things like, you know, punctuation errors, or
Yeah.
a Greek character that's been interpreted as a Latin character, or all sorts of things that could be.
Yeah, and I have to say that usually the Greek is really very, very good. We find more mistakes in the Latin. But this is something that we always have. So also because now we have OCR for Latin, but mostly it's based on modern languages, so it's crazy. Greek is good, but Latin, we find more mistakes in the Latin.
Right, right. Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot, Monica. And thanks for this session. I think we should round up now. I just wanted to remind people watching remotely that this is the last class in the fall semester, and so the last of these classes that is chaired by me. And Sunoikisis Digital Classics will return on January 26th.
Yes.
And the program will be announced by Monica at the beginning of January, I think.
Yes.
And it'll be back to your usual programming. And it's a long 24-week semester next year, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, because we are a bit crazy in Sunoikisis, and I want to thank you, Gabby, really, because we started 3 years ago Sunoikisis, then you joined us, and now you are developing this track in London. So I'm very grateful to you for this help and for this new track. So we need people for help, and so this program was great. And again, yes, I will in GitHub you can find information about that. We are working on the syllabus. We already have a syllabus with the topics and names and dates. So next semester it will be every Thursday at 5 p.m. Leipzig time, which is 4 p.m. in London. And yes, you can already see the topics. We will work on the Google Doc, and we will have single pages for each class.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Yeah,
okay. Thank you. Okay. And Merry Christmas to you.
Sure. And to you and to everyone. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. See you all next year.
Thank you. Bye. Ciao. Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.